I'm Charles, and you're watching The State of the Republic. We begin this week overseas. In Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince is in the process of consolidating his power in an unprecedented way. There were dozens of arrests of high-ranking, current and former officials in the Saudi royal family under the auspices of an anti-corruption probe, and a helicopter crash killed another group of officials. This all comes as Saudi Arabia is further ramping up its war in Yemen, preparing an expansion of the blockade of Yemen after Houthi rebels were able to fire a long-range Iranian ballistic missile at the Saudis, and the Saudi government is being accused of holding the Prime Minister of Lebanon hostage. Meanwhile, Boss Tweet is continuing his trip to Asia. His trip has been marred by stupidity and incompetence, including failing to stand up for a free press against the Chinese government, and promoting his golf courses in a speech in South Korea. But Trump did meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin on the trip, raising even more questions about their relationship. Trump has since stated that Putin denied Russian meddling in the U.S. election, and that he believes Putin over U.S. intelligence, dismissing U.S. intelligence as a bunch of political hacks. For the record, the Russian government denied that Trump and Putin discussed Russian election meddling at all. Yesterday, Trump went off the deep end, attacking Americans and American institutions while siding with Russia and complaining about Kim Jong-un calling him old in a series of tweets. All of this came as there is increasing pressure on Trump with regard to the Russia scandal. The release of the Paradise Papers has revealed much of the financial dirty laundry of the super-rich and big business, and it has also revealed significant financial links between Russians and prominent members of the Trump administration. Russian oligarchs were revealed to have invested in Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner's businesses, and those same oligarchs had invested in Facebook and Twitter. Trump's Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross was also suspected of financial involvement in the Russia scandal, seeing his close involvement with the Bank of Cyprus, a major money laundering hub for Russian interests. Those suspicions were confirmed, with significant financial links to Putin associates revealed in the Paradise Papers. Ross is now facing significant calls to step down from his position, calls he has answered by calling evil. Trump advisor Carter Page had his testimony before the House Intelligence Committee released this week, and in the complete incoherence of it all, there was confirmation of several major accusations. Page asserted that he did meet with Russian officials and told campaign higher-ups about it, that Russian officials did offer a sale of the Russian state-owned oil company Rosneft, as mentioned in the Steele dossier, and that he himself could be considered a paid foreign agent of the Kremlin. Trump's bodyman, Kirk Schiller, also confirmed a key aspect of the Steele dossier, saying that Russians did offer to send 5 prostitutes to Trump's room at the Ritz-Carlton during his stay in 2013. Schiller claimed that Trump turned it down, but no one really believes that, so this served as de facto confirmation of the Steele dossier's accusation about prostitutes and possible blackmail material. Former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn is also under investigation by Mueller's team. Flynn is suspected of being a paid agent for the Russian and Turkish governments, and of possible coordination with the Russians in the campaign. There are also increasing indications that he may have cut a deal with Mueller, because stories are leaking from the family that they are worried about their son's legal jeopardy in the case. Flynn is suspected in a strange kidnapping for hire scheme, in which Flynn would be paid to help kidnap a Turkish dissident living in the United States and hand him over to Turkish representatives. Investigators are also looking at a meeting between Flynn, the Turkish foreign minister, and Republican Congressman Devin Nunes. Nunes is the current chair of the House Intelligence Committee, but was forced to recuse himself after working with the White House to obstruct his committee's investigation. It seems that Nunes had very good reason to be concerned. Mueller's team is also investigating a meeting Flynn had with Putin's favorite congressman, Republican Congressman Dana Rohrabacher. Mueller's team also interviewed Trump advisor Stephen Miller, who was revealed to be the senior advisor discussed in the Papadopoulos filings. Miller also was responsible for writing a letter detailing the real reasons for firing James Comey that was squashed before it had a chance to become public. The Russian lawyer that Donald Trump Jr. and Trump campaign officials met with at the Trump Tower revealed this week that Donald Trump Jr. offered to review the Russia sanctions if his father won the election. It's beginning to smell a lot like collusion. On the home front, the Trump administration was once again pushing terrible policies. Energy Secretary Rick Oops Perry is preparing a policy shift that would raise electricity costs for consumers to subsidize the dying coal industry. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke is trying to sell off Arctic wildlife preserves to big oil, and is considering opening up the Grand Canyon to uranium mining. The United States also now stands as the only nation on the planet not to approve the Paris Climate Accords, after Syria signed on to them this week. The administration is also tacking on more sanctions against Cuba, once again attempting to reverse the progress of the Obama administration. Meanwhile, White House Chief of Staff John Kelly called the acting Secretary of Homeland Security, Elaine Duke, to push her to deport Hondurans who fled violence and natural disasters. Rex Tillerson is still gunning the State Department and causing irreparable damage to the institution itself and its experience and knowledge. The Trump administration has also pushed a slate of heavily white and conservative judicial nominees in efforts to reshape the judiciary for years to come, including one nominee that was so unqualified that he never tried a case and has been deemed unanimously unqualified by the American Bar Association. He was just approved by the Senate Judiciary Committee. Trump's fake voter commission is now being sued by one of its own members for being a partisan exercise in voter suppression efforts. The head of the Voter Suppression Commission, Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach, was also photographed at a fundraiser in the presence of a white supremacist. On Capitol Hill this week, Republicans have continued to push for their tax cut legislation. The ethically challenged Representative Chris Collins from New York, who is himself under investigation for insider trading, admitted this week that the legislation was for his donors, saying that his donors told him that if he didn't pass a tax bill, that he shouldn't bother calling them and asking for money in the future. Despite that, Republican representatives are getting worried about the fact that their bill kills a lot of popular deductions and is tied heavily to Trump. Republican leaders are desperately trying to whip their caucus into line for the bill, with several Republicans announcing opposition to the current legislation. At the same time, various lobbyists and interest groups are busy drilling holes in the bill and trying to change the legislation to better suit their various clients. Republican senators have produced their own tax bill, though, primarily because the Senate version will have to go through reconciliation's rather narrow rules in order to avoid a filibuster. The Senate bill delays implementation of the planned corporate tax cut by 1 year, doubles the exemption for the estate tax instead of completely eliminating it, completely eliminates the state and local deduction, and preserves a number of deductions like mortgage interest, student loan interest, medical expenses, and other important middle-class deductions. Senate and House Republicans are already squabbling with each other over each body's version of the tax plan. The Senate's efforts are further complicated by Rand Paul's absence after a dispute with a neighbor left him with 6 broken ribs and unable to be in D.C. anytime soon. Until Paul comes back to D.C., Republicans can only afford to lose one vote in the Senate on legislation or nominees. On health care, Republicans in the House finally passed a reauthorization of the Children's Health Insurance Program, but with significant strings attached. The bill screws with the other aspects of the healthcare system, including the ACA, and faced mostly united Democratic opposition in the House. The bill is considered dead on arrival in the Senate. In less prominent, but no less important news, a new defense bill aims to give the Pentagon the ability to approve drugs and medical devices, a role previously reserved solely for the FDA. These changes are reflective of a disturbing trend of giving increased authority and credence to the military, far outside of what is normal for the United States and other major democracies. However, Senator Bob Corker is standing up to Trump in an unprecedented way, arranging for the Foreign Relations Committee he chairs to hold hearings on presidential authority to use nuclear weapons. These hearings are extremely likely to paint Trump as a dangerous madman with access to nuclear weapons, and only increase the pressure to remove him under the 25th Amendment. But one of the biggest news items in this week was the 2017 elections. Democrats made massive gains all across America. In Virginia, Democrat Ralph Northam sent Republican Ed Gillespie to a 9-point defeat in the gubernatorial race, and Democrats won other statewide races, including for Attorney General and Lieutenant Governor. In the Virginia House of Delegates, Democrats managed to turn a 66-34 Republican advantage into a likely 50-50 split, with several races still being recounted. In New Jersey, Phil Murphy retook the governorship for the Democrats, restoring trifecta control for the party in New Jersey for the first time since 2010. In Washington state, Democrats won a state Senate race there and now have trifecta control of the state government. In Georgia, Democrats picked up 2 seats in special elections for the state house that were previously held by Republicans. In Maine, voters voted to expand Medicaid under the ACA over the objections of their idiot Tea Party governor, Paul LePage. Democrats also made substantial local pickups as well. In St. Petersburg, Florida, the Democratic challenger defeated the Republican incumbent in the mayoral race there. In Hoboken, New Jersey, the state elected their first Sikh mayor. In Helena, Montana, a Liberian refugee won a mayoral election over an anti-refugee incumbent. It was a great night for Democrats. and they celebrated accordingly. In the aftermath of the elections, Republicans, Fox News, and other right-wing media either tried to ignore the results or said that Republicans lost because they didn't embrace Trump enough, with Trump himself complaining that Gillespie didn't fully embrace him. On this, he is correct. Gillespie only campaigned like Trump. He would have lost by twice what he did if he actually campaigned with Trump. Other Republicans are increasingly weighing their options in terms of distancing themselves from Trump. The drubbing the Republicans took is complicating their plans for both the tax bill and for 2018, with Republican legislators getting increasingly jittery about losing the majority. Multiple House Republicans have already announced their intent to retire after their current term. After the night's disastrous results, Paul Ryan essentially said that the Republicans are stuck with Trump. This year's elections aren't quite yet over, though. A special election race remains to be decided for the Senate seat vacated by Jeff Sessions when he became Attorney General. The two major candidates are Democrat Doug Jones and Republican Roy Moore. Jones is a former U.S. attorney who prosecuted the Klansmen responsible for the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing in Birmingham, Alabama. Moore is a former Alabama Supreme Court justice who was removed twice from the court for violating the U.S. Constitution, who campaigned against the removal of segregationist language from the Alabama state constitution, and is a birther. This week saw a massive bombshell about Moore, with the Washington Post reporting that 4 women have stories of him initiating sexual encounters when they were teenagers, and he was in his 30s, with one of the girls being as young as 14 at the time. Most national Republicans have said that Moore should step down if the allegations are true, while Moore's allies are actually spinning excuses for him to have done what he did. The allegations are gaining increasing credence, though, with multiple Republican senators pulling their support, and the NRSC pulling its financial support. These allegations have gotten Republicans worried, with Republicans in the state considering arranging for the incumbent appointee Luther Strange to run a write-in campaign, or even delaying the election. That the Republican Party is considering canceling or delaying elections when they don't think they'll win is definitely not authoritarian at all and not at all concerning. Moore, defending his actions, said that he generally does not remember dating girls that young. I personally do not generally remember axe-murdering people and eating their flesh. Now would you like to see my soundproof faith spin? If you want to stop a racist, constitution-ignoring child molester from getting to the Senate, support Doug Jones in his campaign for Senate. Thank you for watching the program. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more interesting content.